Hello! My cat has joined us for the Phantom Tollbooth, and we are just to the part where Milo meets the spelling bee. And there's the spelling bee. It kind of looks more like a fly, but that's okay. So here we go with the spelling bee and the Phantom Tollbooth. It's the middle of chapter 4. I am the spelling bee, announced the spelling bee. Don't be alarmed, Alarmed. Talk ducked under the wagon, and Milo, who was not overly fond of normal-sized bees, began to back away slowly. I can spell anything, Anythying, he boasted, testing his wings. Try me. Can you spell goodbye? Suggested Milo as he continued to back away. The bee gently lifted himself into the air and circled lazily over Milo's head. Perhaps, Perhaps, you are under the misapprehension, Mispprehension, that I am dangerous, he said, turning a smart loop to the left. Let me assure, Assure, you, that my intentions are peaceful, Peaceful. And with that, he settled back on the top of the wagon and fanned himself with one wing. Now, he panted, think of the most difficult word you can, and I'll spell it. Hurry up. And he jumped up and down impatiently. He looks friendly enough, thought Milo, not sure how friendly a friendly bumblebee should be, and tried to think of a very difficult word. Spell vegetable, he suggested, for it was one that always troubled him at school. That is a difficult one, said the bee, winking at the letterman. Let me see now. He frowned and wiped his brow and paced slowly back and forth on top of the wagon. How much time do I have? Just 10 seconds, cried Milo excitedly. Count them off, Talk. Oh dear, the bee repeated, continuing to pace nervously. Then, just as the time ran out, he spelled as fast as he could. Vegetable. Correct, shouted the letterman, and everyone cheered. Can you spell everything? Milo asked admiringly. Just about, replied the bee with a hint of pride in his voice. You see, years ago, I was just an ordinary bee, minding my own business, smelling flowers all day, and occasionally picking up part-time work in people's bonnets. That's a saying, a bee in your bonnet. Then one day, I realized that I'd never amount to anything without an education, and being naturally adept at spelling, I decided that balderdash, shouted a booming voice, and from around the wagon stepped a large beetle-like insect dressed in a lavish coat, striped pants, checkered vest, spats, and a derby hat. Let me repeat, balderdash, he shouted again, swinging his cane and clicking his heels in the air. Come on now, don't be ill-mannered. Isn't someone going to introduce me to the little boy? This guy's one of my favorite characters. This, said the bee with complete disdain, is the humbug, a very dislikable fellow. Nonsense, everyone loves a humbug, shouted the humbug. As I was saying to the king just the other day. You've never met the king, accused the bee angrily. Then turning to Milo, he said, Don't believe a thing this old fraud says. Bosh, replied the humbug. We're an old and noble family, honored to the core. Insertions humbugian, if I may use the Latin. Why, we fought in the Crusades with Richard the Lionheart, crossed the Atlantic with Columbus, blazed trails with the pioneers, and today many members of the family hold prominent government positions throughout the world. History is full of humbugs. A very pretty speech, Speech, sneered the bee. Now, why don't you go away? I was just advising the lad on the importance of proper spelling. Bah, said the bug, putting an arm around Milo. As soon as you learn to spell one word, they ask you to spell another. You can never catch up, so why bother? Take my advice, boy, and forget about it. As my great-great-great-grandfather George Washington Humbug used to say. There's the humbug giving advice. You, sir, shouted the bee very excitedly, are an impostor. Impostor. Who can't even spell his own name? A slavish concern for the composition of words is a sign of a bankrupt intellect, roared the humbug, waving his cane furiously. Milo didn't have any idea what this meant, but it seemed to infuriate the spelling bee, who flew down and knocked off the humbug's hat with his wing. Be careful, shouted Milo as the... He's going... Be careful, shouted Milo as the bug swung his cane again, catching the bee on one foot and knocking over a box of W's. My foot, shouted the bee. My hat, shouted the bug, and the fight was on. The spelling bee buzzed dangerously in and out of range of the humbug's wildly swinging cane as they menaced and threatened each other, and the crowd stepped back out of danger. They're fighting, the spelling bee and the humbug. There must be some other way to, began Milo, and then he yelled, watch out! But it was too late. There was a tremendous crash as the humbug, in his great fury, tripped onto one of the stalls, knocking it into another, then another, and then another, until every stall in the marketplace had been upset and words lay scrambled in great confusion all over the square. Oh my goodness. The bee, who had tangled himself in some bunting, toppled to the ground, knocking Milo over on top of him, and lay there shouting, help, help, there's a little boy on me. The bug sprawled untidily on a mound of squashed letters, and Talk, his alarm ringing persistently, was buried under a pile of words. And that ends chapter 4 with a fight between the humbug and the spelling bee. All right, we'll pick it up next time at the beginning of chapter 5. Until then.